Solar PV Cast by Shift, a podcast exploring solar energy and the role it plays in improving our lives and our planet. Here's your host, Chris Palliser.
Hi, yes, it is Chris. Thank you for joining the Solar PV Cast. It is brought to you by Shift. For all your solar and energy storage needs, be sure to visit shift.ca. Now, sometimes when you're so close to something, you forget to tell everybody about the things that are obvious to you. And the solar industry, well, that's definitely no different. That's why I'm really excited about the conversation that we're going to have on the show today, because it's with a client of Shift. And we get the perspective of somebody who has just gone through the transition to solar. Now, this person joining the show is also somebody who's an incredibly passionate advocate for solar, wants the whole world to go solar. So I'm excited to welcome to the show Dr. Karen Karsten. Dr. Karen, welcome.
Thanks, Chris. Really happy to be here today.
So first, solar in general. What makes you so passionate when it comes to solar?
Well, I have two kids, and I'm looking at what we're seeing, the weather shifts and what's going on in our world today, and really starting to worry that our continued use of fossil fuels is going to become incredibly problematic. If it hasn't already, it's going to become worse. And if we don't start making moves, or let's give you the plug here, get some shifts happening, then we're going to be in some serious trouble. And I think education is one of the key points for getting us over some of those fears around solar and the challenges that we're facing.
How's it been so far now that your system is up and running and you are using solar?
It's kind of fun. I've kind of almost become obsessive about it. I keep checking the app to see how much I'm producing, and we have a cloudy day. I want to see how much is happening and doing that. And then I'm on BC Hydro because it actually shows you the net metering on there, so I can see, how much excess I'm producing, and then I'm calculating, or, am I going to get enough back? So I admit that I'm getting a little bit crazily obsessive about it. It will probably drift, but it's been a lot of fun, and it's also been exciting to know that, I'm making a difference. And on a sunny summer day, I generate off my panels as much electricity as I use.
Amazing. Yeah, it's funny, that app, every night, the people that I know that have solar arrays, every night before bed, you check your social media and then you check the app. And it's pretty cool because, you can see exactly what's happening. It reminds me of, I always bring this one up. It's like pickleballers. If you play pickleball or you have a solar array, within 10 minutes within that person at the pub, you know that they play pickleball and have solar.
Absolutely. I have to admit, I'm doing that all the time, showing people my numbers and getting excited about with sunny days.
What do the kids think now that the array's up and running?
Well, they're not actually in my house right now, so they haven't really been by. I've sent them, of course, pictures from screenshots from my app to show them what's going on. And they're both pretty excited about the fact that we're doing that to try to make a bit of a difference.
Going through the process, just like anything, this is a big purchase and some big decisions have to be made. How was that for you to, from, again, a client perspective, going through things to get the app up and running and get the system set up?
The whole process actually in general was quite smooth. It was well organized with respect to the installation date. We had some challenges there's some loans that you can get with the government, and there were some challenges with how that went, and there's some rebates as well. So there's some challenges around that, but that wasn't actually Shift. That's a different company entirely. But within Shift, it was really, really smooth. Like, they gave us a scheduled date. They came out, they did the setup. Then we got the app running, and then it was about a week after that BC Hydro actually truly started the proper net metering. So there was a little bit of a delay from when we were producing energy to when BC Hydro was giving us back our net metering.
Now, I know you mentioned there's some challenges. It would be important for somebody watching to be aware, because a lot of people want to take advantage of those rebates. And the Greener Homes program is the program you're referring to. The federal government is offering people right now. It's a $5,000 rebate and an up to $40,000 0% interest loan, which is really speeding up the transition to solar. And we've discussed this before, and I know you're an advocate for just kind of looking out for yourself and making sure you're following up with your energy advisor and things like that. Would you have any tips for somebody watching and about to go through this process?
Yeah, and I think where we got caught, and it was a miscommunication, I'm sure, which we all know is one of the biggest challenges when you have big projects like this. And it was that that somehow we did not receive the request or all the paperwork we needed to fill out. And once the project is actually completed, so in other words, once that solar panels are up there, you can't go backwards and say, "Hey, I want the loan." So we actually lost out on the loan as a result because we didn't have the paperwork completed, but that was our lack of knowledge. So we had some great conversations with your team at Shift. And even though, again, it's not their responsibility, they may throw that question out to the client. Hey, if you've applied for loans, have you gotten those loans completed and signed off? Because we're in the trouble if we don't. If you need that
Yeah.
money, it's not going to happen if you don't have that in place.
Totally. Yeah. So it's really important because just like anything with the government, there's paperwork and boxes you got to check. And so it's
Absolutely.
definitely a learning moment for everyone. If you're watching or listening to the Solar PV cast, make sure you're doing your homework, I guess, so that you can take full advantage and get your solar system up and running. Now that yours is up and running, let's talk about, I wanted to title this episode Expected Losses, because this is something we run into when we have conversations with people looking to go solar. So can you talk a little bit about, you put together this great document, I should say, and we thank you for that, on expected losses. And
Mhm.
could you speak a little bit about the surprises that that you learned along the way when you're transitioning to solar and some of those expected losses?
Absolutely. So when we had our original proposal given to us by Shift, it indicated that we were going to have about a 13.5 kilowatt system. We have 500 watt panels. There's 27 on the roof, and we're thinking, wow, that's amazing. This is going to pay back really, really fast. And then when I turned on the app that very first day, I'm seeing 9.5 kilowatts, and I'm like, huh, what's that about? And it's bright and it's sunny out there, and I don't understand. And so I started thinking something was wrong with the system. And then, of course, that set us down the path of trying to figure out what was going on and conversations with Shift to help clarify all that. And I think the biggest thing to understand is like we're operating right now in our system at about a 65% efficiency, give or take. That's not bad. If we were down, the first thing I guess backtrack, the first number that I came across that was really helpful for me was to discover that if I had that system set up in somewhere like Florida or California, really closer, much closer to the equator, for example, they're expecting 80%. So our angles are going to be much less. So we're obviously going to be less than 80%. So right there, I was going, oh, that's interesting. Okay. And that helped. And then I started understanding that when they rank those panels and you get a 500 watt panel, that's under these perfect lab conditions. It's kind of like when they say, your miles per gallon or liters per 100 kilometer for your car is this amount, and you go out there and you never get that number. It's because we don't live in that perfect laboratory sort of situation. So some of the losses that that my husband and I are now really truly understanding are things like obviously clouds. That's a straightforward and easy one, but it gets hazy around here. And if you're in a big city, it might be smog. And right now, this summer, we actually lost about 10 kilowatts on a couple of days because of smoke. And that's something we're going to have to start thinking about. The panels are set and tested at 25 degrees Celsius in the labs, but they can get as high as 66 degrees Celsius, and they're not operating as efficiently at that point. Debris that lands on the panel, dust, branches, leaves, and kind of a funny little aside on that one. We live right on the ocean. And if you've ever seen a heron drop its poop, it's kind of looks a little bit like when you see the airplane water bombers dropping on the fires and you see that wall of water. That's kind of what it looks like when a heron drops. And if that hits your panels, I'm imagining there's going to be a little bit of need to go up there and rinse them off carefully with a soft cloth and some, mild
Right.
soapy water, no
That's
pressure
right. Don't
washers.
power wash. Don't
Don't
power
power
wash.
wash. I already
Yeah.
found that out.
Yeah.
Didn't do it, but asked about that.
Perfect.
Shade, there's trees and branches. We have a chimney on our roof that covers a little bit of one of the panels from about 1 o'clock or so onward. Sometimes even the other angles of your roofs can create shade on your panels. We don't have a lot of snow, but that's, another thing that can kind of create shade, and that tends to melt off from what I understand. I have a friend in Ontario with panels, and she says it melts off pretty quick. And then one of the big ones was angle. Like having that perfect angle that they create in the lab, we don't get that. And so if you have a sloped roof, there's a good chance they'll follow the slope, and that may not be the perfect angle. We have a lot of flat roof on our house, and we discovered they couldn't lift the panels up to that angle by a long shot, because the amount of wind shear that would come from off the ocean would result in our entire roof structure needing to be re-engineered and rebuilt. And again, that cost, it wasn't even close.
Yeah.
And I think one of the last ones that really kind of hit us in one way was we had this idea that we could cover every square inch of our roof. We were going to max out. And then we're looking at the plans and going, why have they only got 27 panels on there? I could squeeze another 5 up there easy. And what it turned out was our electrical panel could only handle 27 panels. So it's a good idea to say, if you're talking to somebody or you are somebody that's building a new house, think about that when you're installing your electrical system. And if you're wanting to put solar on there, an upgrade to a slightly larger system might allow you to have bigger panels down the road.
Very much so. Yeah, those are all great points. And starting with the panel, for instance, you're bang on. A lot of older homes, especially in Victoria, have the 100 amp panel. I think that limits you to 12 solar panels right there. So you're right. We do talk a lot about being solar ready, and there's a podcast on this, I should say. and one of the points is, if you're building a new home, think about solar from the design point of view, because if you can put a 200 amp panel in, all of a sudden you can get 30 plus panels, with a 225 amp bus bar and things like that. So you're bang on. And then the angle is really interesting as well, because a perfect solar panel angle is equivalent to the latitude. So for us, it would be about 49 degrees. That panel's pointed south to maximize the sunshine coming at us in the winter, because the sun's so low on the horizon. But you're bang on. The cost of putting that panel at 49 degrees on your roof, any roof, especially a flat roof that's going to catch all that wind, it just financially doesn't make a lot of sense. So it's really interesting how, everything's broken down to the cost up front. It's kind of like microinverters. It's like, that's another thing. Clipping, that's a whole nother episode where you'll see a lot of people will see their solar production, instead of that beautiful kind of curve, it goes up and it's got a flat top and then it drops down. And I'm sure, I don't know if you've experienced the clipping yet. There you go. But the reason is so that, yes, you're going to lose some on those peak summer days, but you're going to gain more in the shoulder season and more throughout the day. So why would why would your solar installer give you a massive inverter when it costs a lot more money? Again, it's just going to hurt the ROI on that system. What I really love is that you've experienced these challenges, but you're still incredibly proud of going solar. Can you speak a little bit to, that part of it, how that is outweighing any of these little hurdles that we face in North America?
And I think that's, coming back to, what I was saying at the beginning, it's like trying to basically make as small an imprint on this earth as I possibly can as I move forward. In the spring, I just purchased my first electric car. So, that was kind of a neat thing to be able to tie that into the solar as well. So knowing that my solar system is going to offset that electric car. So I'm not putting more of a burden onto the grid as a result of having purchased that. So, to me, it's like there's so many pieces around this to be, if not, maybe not the word proud, but at least looking forward to the opportunities that each person can make. And knowing that over the course of that 25-year life of my panel, it's paid off in 16 and a half years by the estimates you guys have created, which I have absolutely all faith in. So that means that out the other side of this, using numbers on my panel, I'm going to basically come out with about $40,000 ahead of if I had not done that over these next 25 years. So I actually make money in a way off of the panels, which is exciting. It's absolutely exciting. And it makes me sort of think, especially with those loans in place, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
I always think it's so funny with solar how a lot of people are like, wow, 25, 30, $35,000 for why would I spend that? Yet they go and spend $50,000 on a car that's got zero ROI. It's like, yes, I get it's a big ticket item, but look at what's going to happen 10, 15 years from now when that car you just paid $50,000 for is worth nothing and your solar is still producing. And I mean, they can go 40 plus years, you know what I mean? Any other surprises or pleasant surprises that have come from having your array up on your house? Maybe it's simply the conversations, the neighbors stopping in and saying hi.
I think that, I mean, we haven't really gotten to that point yet. It's only been up and running for a little under a month, and we've been really busy. But it does set up conversations for sure. It really does. And again, having the electric vehicle, we can sort of tie that all together, and you kind of hit people on both angles.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that that's actually been a lot of fun because when you pull up to the station or whatever, if you are charging off of your property, you start into the conversations and yeah, I pull the solar into there every time. It's like, yeah, hey, it's great. I actually produce my own energy. It's like, yeah, I'm here today paying, but at home I offset that completely through my solar panels. And it's
Yeah.
amazing the conversations that get going with that too.
And I always say this, Canada is actually a wonderful place for solar. I had a gentleman on from Iqaluit, Nunavut, and he is leading the way for solar in Iqaluit, and he's incredibly proud of his system. Back to those lab ratings that you were speaking about, in Iqaluit, their panels actually are producing more than the lab is giving them because it's so cold. In minus 50 degrees, just like anything, when a radio gets too hot or your cell phone gets too hot and it says, I need to chill, I'm way too hot. Solar panels are the same. To your point, when they're really hot up on the roof, they're not going to be as efficient. But in minus 50 degrees and on a sunny day, a 450 watt solar panel, he was telling me his 450 watt solar panels were producing like 520 watts. Because, again, it's a sunny, cold day in Canada, you're laughing for solar.
Well, Chris, I'm really sorry. Even though that sounds amazing, I would love to get that kind of production. I am not moving up north into that kind of an area to get that. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, pros and cons to everything, right? The rain here on the coast, yeah, we get the rain, but it keeps the panels clean and keeps that soiling to a minimum, which is a bonus, right?
Yeah. And most people don't realize. I know I had a friend of mine. They're like, "Oh my God, like I'm originally from Calgary, so I moved out here 20 years ago for my career." And people are going, "Oh, it's going to be raining all the time," and they don't realize that actually we have the same amount of sunshine as a lot of Southern Ontario locations in Victoria. Like we actually are considered a very sunny city, and it's not necessarily all the rest of the coast, but we do actually quite well here.
Yeah, and so when we get these mild temperatures with a sunny day, the panels are doing great. I will touch on too the 0.5 degradation. Just like anything, over years, a solar panel drops about 0.5 in efficiency every year. And if your solar installer's top notch, they're going to have all these things up front, listed out in the proposal, broken down, soiling accounted for. Because at the end of the day, I think, and actually I'd love to get your thoughts on this, I think transparency is really the way forward and education is the way forward. What do you think?
I absolutely agree. I mean, we have all the you made a comment at one point and we were chatting about this idea about conspiracies. And I think where that comes from a lot is the fact that we're not being transparent. We're not saying, hey, this is what it is going to be. It's like your 13.5 kilowatt system is only going to produce somewhere between, 8.5 and 9.5 at its best. And once you get told that and you're told that up front and you understand that that's how it is for everybody, that's just how it goes, then it's not such a big deal because you make that decision with your eyes open. I think it's when you get those little zingers from the back after you've, signed on the dotted line and said, hey, I'm in for my, 30,000 or 40,000, whatever is your system cost. And then suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, I'm losing 35% of my production. What's that about? and then you start kind of wondering what's going on. And like you said, if you're up front and you say, hey, you're going to have losses, this, and this. We have a client who's like right on the ocean, direct sun, there's nothing impeding it really. And she's getting 35% losses. That's normal.
Yeah.
And that's good. And we've built that into our proposal. So it's not an issue. And
especially when
great.
You're guaranteeing production, you better be straight up with that. If you're putting a 25-year guarantee on that, for sure. The transition to solar overall in terms of the country, we're at an amazing place where it's speeding up, and education is the way. So I appreciate that you volunteered to come on this podcast and be a part of that education. I know you spoke a little bit about that in general. Is that something you kind of see yourself doing?
I'm not sure that it's something that I necessarily see myself, pursuing as a topic. But
Right.
For me, it's like any time that I can find a way to help, especially local businesses, come ahead and grow and make changes that are positive, I'm all over that. So if you're not the only one, there's other, causes that I would say are near and dear to my heart that I volunteer my time to. Anything that can help us move forward in a positive way, I'm all over that.
Amazing. Yeah. Education is the key, and you've definitely given us some of that perspective today. So I want to thank you, Dr. Karen Karsten, for coming on the Solar PV Cast and giving us that vital point of view, because like I said off the top, when you're in it, you're in it every day. I'm sure just like with your career, you kind of miss a few things that somebody, a fresh set of eyes gives you that little reminder, if you will.
And that's so important within my own profession. I think within everything we do, we quite often forget that other people don't have the knowledge always that we have. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to express that, and grateful that Shift does this to try to help people overcome, any of the concerns or fears that they may have around solar.
Amazing. Dr. Karen Karsten, once again, joining us on the Solar PV Cast. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The Solar PV Cast by Shift with Chris Palliser. To begin your solar journey, visit shift.ca.